Hello, 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 and welcome to Alexasrewm, where we are not lawyers, we are not medical professionals, we are not law enforcement, we are just people who have opinions about all things going on in the true crime community, including what the heck is going on with the Alec Baldwin trial. Now, before I get into today's recap, I know there was a ton of Turtle Boy updates. I will be banking a separate video on that tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. You will be getting not one, but two videos from me. So one about Turtle Boy and then one about the Alec Baldwin Day 3 trial update at the very end of the day. So that being said, let's dive in. I want to start with this verbal spanking that was done by Judge Summer to, of all people, the press about leaving dirty cups in the war room that they were hanging out in. It's just like a fun kind of light moment. And she's definitely no Judge Bev, I'll say that.
And you just need to be patient. We're trying to move the trial along, okay? So, thank you. All right. And I'm sorry, I don't. This probably isn't the most appropriate time, but media in the war room or whatever we call it. One more cup, and everybody is not allowed to bring any liquids of any kind whatsoever. My staff is, and our county people are not going to be picking up trash that you all could pick up. Okay, and that also means downstairs in the jury assembly room. So one more cup, one more water. Let's just have some manners on picking up after ourselves, okay? All right, sorry I had to bring.
She's like, I just like how she's like, I'm sorry, this is probably not the most appropriate time to bring this up, but I need to address this thing because y'all are nasty. And like, seriously, what's going on, press? Like, who is it? I know Larry, the DUI guy, is there. I can't imagine it's him, but like, who is it, Larry? Who is she verbally spanking? I would love to know. So anyways, that was kind of a lighter moment to start the day off. You can even see a smirk from Alec Baldwin's defense attorney right here, Alex Spiro. So we will now moving on into what the crux of today's video is really about. So Cross got a little bit heated with the crime scene tech as we continued her cross-examination from earlier. Things didn't really seem to heat up until after the lunch break. So we're going to skip forward to that. But the defense really did a good job, I think, in some ways, of poking a lot of holes, really distracting the jury about what the prosecution's case really is to prove. And it's not how the live rounds ended up on the set or how they were loaded into the gun, but rather if Alec Baldwin actually pulled the trigger or not. So, but to the prosecution's credit, they come back swinging pretty freaking hard on redirect. But first, let's dive into the defense's cross.
Detective Hancock was aware of that individual, that he had come to the sheriff's office. And
you never vouchered that and turned it over to the defense, did you?
It was a doc information situation.
I don't know what that means. Can you just explain it to me?
So, like, I mean, again, like, I'll give him where credit is due when he does start to poke holes into this. But I mean, him asking her why you didn't turn this over to the defense, why would she have to turn anything over to the defense? She's just an employee. She's a crime scene tech. That's not her job. Like, you're asking the wrong person, dude. Ask the prosecution that. That's their job to turn stuff over to you. So he has a lot of interesting questions. He constantly refers to her also as an investigator, but she's not an investigator. She's a crime scene tech, and she even corrects him at least once when he refers to her like that, because it's not correct. And she's trained to be very precise. And even though I think she could have done a better job in a lot of ways, she just doesn't seem like the right witness to be this aggressive with this specific line of questioning. But it gets more interesting from here.
Meaning that I was instructed by my lieutenant to create a doc info report on it.
And I mean, what does that mean?
These were documenting information that this individual came and gave this ammunition to us.
Okay, but you didn't, I mean, he told you it had to do with the Rush shooting, correct?
Yes,
And he told you actually that he was a police officer in a neighboring county, right?
I believe he said he was a retired police officer, yes.
And he told you all had been duped by Seth Kenny, didn't he?
No,
In words and substance.
So I'm actually going to back this up a little bit just because I want you to hear, and I know we already played that one little clip.
ammunition.
And they turned in the end.
The words that I used was, that's why we're here. We're here to try and figure out what happened.
And one of your fellow officers sort of came over the top of you and sort of confirmed to him, don't worry, we're going to find out.
Effect on listener? What? One word, but objection. Yes, what is it?
Objection to hearsay, the officer isn't here, who is speaking now?
Respond.
It's not for the truth of the matter asserted that it was her.
Okay. Well, did you lay the foundation for that? Did you ask her what she did because of that?
Not yet, but I can.
Okay.
And after
Foundation for effect on listener.
after what you said and what you heard from your fellow officer, it is true, as you testified previously, that you did go out to seek the source of that lethal round, right?
Please rephrase your question as to the word seek.
Sure. After you said what you said, and
You see that Baldwin smirk too? He has a lot of interesting facial expressions, and I don't know how much the jury can see in this courtroom. I imagine it's not probably that big. It looks pretty small, but I mean, cameras can be deceiving.
officer said what he said. Is it not the case that you made it a priority to try to find the source of the lethal ammunition, correct?
Our priority was to find the facts of what had happened in the situation.
And one of the steps that you took that we talked about, by searching the truck, by going to Seth Kenny, and getting a PDQ, one of the things you then did was you did seek out and try to find the source of the lethal ammunition, correct?
Yes,
And as you were doing that, you continued to work with Corporal Hancock, right?
yes.
You would see her and the prosecutors often, right?
I would see Corporal Hancock more often.
And you testified previously about the search for the lethal ammunition at the trial of the armorer, correct?
Yes,
And a question came up at that trial of this issue of, did Seth Kenny really provide the ammunition to Seth or not, right?
yes, I believe that came up.
Okay. And eventually there was a verdict in that case, right?
Yes,
And a good Samaritan walked into the police station and gave you the lethal ammunition, didn't they?
So this is the part I really wanted to pause on because at this time, I mean, I'm somebody who's new coming into this case. I don't really know a whole lot. I loosely followed the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed case. Allegedly, she's going to be testifying tomorrow, so we'll see if she pleads the fifth or if she throws Baldwin under the bus or if, I don't know, she says something else completely ridiculous. So we'll see. We will be covering it all. But he brings up this character of the Good Samaritan, and it kind of frames it in the way that he frames this is it's just some random person who happened upon these live rounds and was good enough and I guess felt the need to go to the police precinct, which is kind of, I mean, I don't know if I came across like empty, I don't know what they would look like, but like empty rounds of bullets, I don't know if I would think to go to the police precinct. Maybe I would call 911. I don't know, thinking maybe there was a shooting that happened or occurred. I mean, or I'd just keep on walking by. I just don't know, but that's kind of the way that he frames it. I don't know if this is how it was framed in the Gutierrez-Reed case, but let me know if you guys tuned into that and let me know what you think.
after the Hannah Gutierrez trial, there was an individual that came to the police station and stated they had ammunition.
And they turned in the ammunition
Yes,
and they gave it to you, right?
yes,
And they told you that this was the ammunition that ended up with Seth Kenny that killed Miss Hutchins, right?
I do not recall.
So that's an interest. The way he frames that is interesting because you'll see constantly the defense shifting the blame from like whether it's Dave Halls or Seth Kenny, anybody, or even Miss Gutierrez-Reed. anybody who isn't Baldwin, which is his job. He's trying to create reasonable doubt for the jury. So I think he does a pretty decent job at, again, distracting the jury about, yeah, the actual death of Helena Hudgens and the ammunition, how'd they get on there in the first place? And like that has nothing to do with Alec Baldwin, because remember, the producer role has been eliminated from coming into this trial, which is going to make it increasingly difficult for the prosecution to prove their case.
All of their statements.
Who did you tell about that?
During that conversation, my Lieutenant Brian Brandel, was with me, and Detective Hancock was aware of that individual, that he had come to the sheriff's office.
And you never vouchered that and turned it over to the defense, did you?
It was a doc information situation.
Like, what a weird question. Why would she, and he brings this up again, like, why would she be responsible for turning anything over to the defense? That's not her job, dude.
I don't know what that means. Can you just explain it to me?
Meaning that I was instructed by my lieutenant to create a doc info report on it.
And I mean, what does that mean?
We were documenting information that this individual came
I
and gave this
understood
ammunition
that.
to us.
Okay, but you didn't, I mean, he told you it had to do with the rush shooting, correct?
Yes.
And he told you actually that he was a police officer in a neighboring county, right?
I believe he said he was a retired police officer. Yes.
And he told you you all had been duped by Seth Kenny, didn't he?
No,
In words and substance, didn't he?
I don't recall that. No.
Okay. And he said to you, I'm willing to fill out a witness statement, right?
No, I don't recall that.
He told you that the rounds came from a green ammo can, didn't he?
Judge, I have to object to your saying.
Sustain.
Did you take the rounds that were provided to you? By the way, they were Starline Brass Nickel Primer live, weren't they?
I don't recall.
You don't recall? Really?
That is what I said.
I just, really? I don't know. He gives me like bro-y vibes. Like he, like almost like doofy. Like he's trying to really like, this is like his big aha moment, which kind of gives me a little bit of Lally vibes. But especially with like Lally, it's like certain exhibits that had like of evidence that just had nothing to do like with anything that was remotely relevant to proving his case. So I don't know, he gives me like a doofy vibe, especially with this like really like I don't know. I get like there's definitely some hostility between him and this witness for sure. Oh no, this part is funny because now the judge is going to give him a verbal spanking.
Well, it's information acted upon is going to be my response. But he told you the reason that he was coming in is because he didn't trust law enforcement on this case.
Well, you know what? She's going to object to hearsay, and you're going to say effect on listener.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to lay your foundation better. You
Yeah.
are.
So now, let me ask this question. How come law enforcement didn't vouch?
I mean, that's pretty bad. Like the judge is essentially saying like, dude, you don't like, do you know what you're doing right now? And it kind of like again, you were doing pretty good. Okay. With the Good Samaritan thing, the live rounds, the distractions. Yes. But that kind of just discredits you a little bit. And apparently from some reports, he's not necessarily a criminal defense attorney. He's more of a civil case lawyer. So if any of you guys know, let me know in the comment. Let me know in the comment section below. But it just begs a question. Why would Baldwin hire? I don't know.
Voucher this with the rest of the evidence in the Rust case?
I'm not sure what you mean by the word voucher.
How come you didn't inventory it and put it with all the rest of the evidence in the Rust case?
I was instructed to put this in as a doc information case, which I did, and it is under that case number.
You buried it.
No.
Your lieutenant,
There
Like,
is a
matter.
supplemental report on it, and that was placed into evidence.
did you ever turn that over to the defense?
I have not turned over anything to the defense.
No, you haven't, because guess what? That's not your job. That's not your job. That's the prosecution's job. So again, it seems like sometimes like he's going somewhere, and then he just it pivots into a direction of what, like, do you know what trial you're like what case you're trying?
My information goes through the sheriff's office.
Are you aware of whether the sheriff's office ever informed the defense that a Good Samaritan came in and turned in his ammunition?
I do not know.
When the defense came to view the Starline brass nickel primer live ammunition with you, you didn't show them this, did you?
I did not have an evidence viewing with the defense. That was my coworker.
Your coworker didn't show this to the defense, correct?
I do not know.
Do you have any reason to believe your coworker showed this to the defense, given that it wasn't put in the same inventory as the rest of the case?
No.
I mean, again, yeah, like how everything's inventoried, like, but I could see the argument of like, hey, I'm just another cog in the machine. I'm just doing what I'm told to do, and that's it, dude. Like, I don't know what to tell you. That's kind of the vibe I get from her. Whether or not that means that she's doing a great job, I mean, I don't know. But you can definitely see like Baldwin's like, yeah, we got her. That's the face of we got her. So now I wanna go over to, there's a few more minutes of it, but then the prosecution claps back pretty hard, and pretty much discredits everything Spiro just tried to poke holes through. Because again, these are all just distractions, all things that have really nothing relevant to do with this specific case that they're trying, because again, they don't need to prove how the live rounds got onto the set, how they got into the gun. All they need to prove is whether or not Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger, and that's it. Is that going to be easy? No, not necessarily. I mean, I know that they took some swabs of DNA on the gun. Naturally, there's going to be probably tons of DNA, not only of Baldwin, but probably of, Hannah and everybody else handling all the props. So I can only imagine how difficult that's going to be to prove if he did it. And unless you have eh, like concrete eyewitness testimony, and even that can be, you can take it or leave it. It's not always the most reliable, especially because this happened years ago. It happened quite some time ago, enough for people to not necessarily remember. And with all the reporting that's been out and done about this case, it can get confusing. So it's not a open and shut case. I would say it's going to be a little tough, but the prosecution comes in pretty strong with this initial clapback.
Ms. Poplar, are you a detective?
No, I am not.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in this case?
No, I did not.
You didn't interview Mr. Baldwin?
No.
You didn't interview Ms. Gutierrez?
No.
Mr. Spiro was asking you about the Good Samaritan who arrived at the sheriff's department after the Gutierrez trial. Can you tell the members of the jury when the Gutierrez trial was?
I don't recall exactly. I believe it was back in April.
Would you take end of February, beginning of March?
Yes, that sounds more accurate.
Okay. Do you recall the Good Samaritan's name?
I do not.
Would you recognize it if I said it to you?
Yes.
Troy Teskey.
Yes, that was his name.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey is a close friend of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's father?
No, I did not know that.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey had his own motivations for wanting to place blame on Seth Kinney to help Hannah Gutierrez?
Objection, leading, objection, irrelevant.
Overruled.
Please answer.
I mean, is it irrelevant because before you were slinging around Seth Kenny's name left and right? So leading though 100%. So I don't know what the judge. Half the time I have no idea what this judge is thinking. I think sometimes she just objects or sometimes she overrules, or just because she's trying to keep things moving along as quickly as possible. That's just my opinion. But she brings up a good point. Okay, so this Good Samaritan was a friend, a very close friend of Hannah's father. Interesting. Interesting. Now, does does it really matter? Well, yeah, it doesn't really matter necessarily, but it's relevant to your cross-examination because you just brought Seth Kenny's name up a bunch of times. So if you're going to go there and talk about the live rounds and how they got onto the set, then we're going to talk about the live rounds that got onto the set. That's how it goes. But I just love, and I want to go back to this initial clapback that she has where she's just firing off essentially, what is your role? And I think even if she asked that question of, can you just remind the jury what your exact duties are as a crime scene technician? Because there were plenty of times where Spiro would refer to her as an investigator, which is incredibly misleading because I don't know if maybe he was just confused or he's using these terms because he just thinks like, oh, they're interchangeable, but they're not. They're very distinct roles. If you're going to play this whole theory of Alec Baldwin is just a actor playing a role and it was Harlan Russ playing this role and there has to be this distinction between man and character, well, then you should at least know what the roles are in an investigation. And a crime scene tech doesn't need to take witness statements and doesn't need to pass along evidence to your team. Like that's not their job. So I think this was a really good fiery clapback.
Ms. Poplar, are you a detective?
No, I am not.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in this case?
No, I did not.
You didn't interview Mr. Baldwin?
No,
You didn't interview Ms. Gutierrez?
no.
Mr. Spiro was asking you about the Good Samaritan who arrived at the sheriff's department after the Gutierrez trial. Can you tell the members of the jury when the Gutierrez trial was?
I don't recall exactly. I believe it was back in April.
Would you take it into February, beginning of March?
Yes, that sounds more accurate.
Okay. Do you recall the Good Samaritan's name?
I do not.
Would you recognize it if I said it to you?
Yes.
Troy Teskey.
Yes, that was his name.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey is a close friend of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's father?
No, I did not know that.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey had his own motivations for wanting to place blame on Seth Kinney to help Hannah Gutierrez?
Objection, leading, objection, irrelevant.
Overruled, overruled.
Please answer.
No, I had no knowledge of that.
And like I know this prosecutor gets a lot of heat. Like a lot of people are like, she's like, I don't like her sarcastic. I kind of like it. I don't know. She's very I feel like she very compliments the attitude of the judge, except she's just more bullish. Which is kind of nice to see. Like she's definitely not putting anybody to sleep, for sure. She definitely knows how to command a room. Sometimes I think she overplays her card a little bit too much, which she will do later on in this redirect. But I think she right off the gate, I mean, she makes the point of none of this stuff matters. It's just a distraction from the defense trying to take away what Alec Baldwin is really on trial for here. So now she does probably the most badass thing I've seen in a trial. You can see the crime scene tech is all for it too. Baldwin is not happy.
Now, to be clear, is Mr. Baldwin charged with
She takes his whiteboard. And not only does that, but she blocks him. She blocks the defense. I'm assuming the jury is on that side because she has the whiteboard facing that way. So now the jury can't even see Alec Baldwin's too. Alec Baldwin or Alec Baldwin's seat. It's pretty hilarious. I mean, what a way to command a room. And then she makes even a few more even really, really good points. And we're going to wrap this thing up in a few more minutes, just highlighting a few more moments. But I really want to dig into how she kind of ties everything together.
Involuntary manslaughter for bringing live rounds on the movie set?
No.
Is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for loading a live round into the gun?
No.
Has a person already been tried and convicted for those things?
Yes.
To try to clarify some points, Starline Brass, is that a brand of ammunition?
Yes, it is.
Is it a brand of ammunition or a casing?
It is a casing.
Okay. And the live rounds from the set of rust had nickel primers, right?
Yes.
Objection, leading every question.
Overruled.
So that was pretty much what I wanted to play, is just her. And I think she could have really like wrapped things up here. Is just with the whiteboard.
To be clear,
I'll play that again.
is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for bringing live rounds on the movie set?
No.
Is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for loading a live round into the gun?
No.
Has a person already been tried and convicted for those things?
Yes.
I have no more questions. Like, I really feel like that would have been a mic drop moment. I don't think she really needs to entertain the rest of this, because it just further proves her point of, we're not going to entertain these silly ideas of how the live rounds ended on the set. We already proved that. We already had that case proven. We already got that, the villain in that story. That's not why we're here today. And I think she did a really excellent job of tying it together. Now she kind of breaks down more of what Spiro's cross-examination, breaking down more about the live rounds, and again getting into the Seth Kenny stuff. So I'm not going to play that back. You guys can watch the full trial here. I'll link the video below for you if you want to catch the full court TV. So then pretty much they bring up Alessandro Pietta, who is the manufacturer of the firearm. They also brought up his marketing guy, which was really interesting. That was the guy who essentially got the gun to the trade show that they were talking about earlier in the case. And then they brought up Detective Hancock, who started her direct examination. Not really too much came out other than she was the assisting investigator. She was in charge of, she was in the room with Baldwin during the interrogation, as well as I think Hall and Gutierrez-Reed. So not too much unfolded after that. Those were the two really big moments. But the only other thing that really popped out to me was just during Pietta's testimony, where he talks about, and really this could have been this didn't really need to be a long direct examination. And it wasn't really even too long of I don't even know if he was crossed, actually, now that I think about it. No, his marketing guy wasn't crossed. But his cross-examination wasn't that long. They really just wanted to talk about, like, was the gun modified when it left your manufacturing company? He said no. Was it is it able to fire? Are you able to fire this firearm without pulling the trigger? And this is what he had to say.
A little more, and when you reach that point, you can shoot the load under the firing pin.
I'm gonna actually back that up a little bit. It's a little hard to understand him. He's from Italy, but he's definitely charming. He definitely comes off charming to the jury for sure.
The firing pin is in the rest position when the hammer is down the frame, so the firing pin is not against the primer. Nothing happened, because if you want to shoot a primer, you need to apply a certain quantity of force to shoot it. So you can get.
And I'm gonna bring on my wife, actually, because she used to do competition shooting, and she and I were talking about revolvers. She used to shoot some revolvers as well too. So everything he's saying, if there's not enough force behind it to pull the trigger, it's not gonna fire.
Thick touch on the primer, but the gun will not shoot.
Okay. If the firing pin is actually on the primer?
Close to.
Okay. But you had said that if the firing pin is on the primer and you drop the gun, what could happen?
Usually, is based on the primer technology. The powder in the primer is not at the top of the primer, it's just a little in the middle. So you need to press it a little more. And when you reach that point, you can shoot the load under the firing pin.
So what I'm hearing you say, it sounds like the only way you can fire this gun is by pulling the trigger.
That's the way that should be done.
Is there another way to
No.
fire this gun?
No.
So, and I was watching a stream earlier with Popcorn Planet. Andy Signor brought up a really good point of, he kind of like messed up there by saying it should be done this way, or what is the exact quote that he said?
That's the way that should be done.
That's the way that it should be done. So again, but then he kind of corrects himself, and he said, yeah, that is the only way. So if he just said, yeah, like you can't fire this gun any other way, but given the language barrier as well too, I think overall he came off charming. That being said, as soon as the gun left his manufacturing company, I mean, it's out of his hands. He doesn't really have control over, any kind of potential manipulations that could be done to the gun itself. So before we run, I want to pull up this other clip because I know I mentioned it in my opening and it's been like a frenzy on Twitter. Everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe Alec Baldwin stormed out but this was actually during, this was right after, I believe, the lunch break where the attorneys were going through motions. So to my knowledge, the jury wasn't actually present at this time. So, and he walked out. This is all according to Larry, the DUI guy, who's actually sitting in the room. He just went out to get a coffee, but everybody's kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe he stormed out.
He's not allowed to walk out, Chad. What the fuck is happening?
I love Emily D. Baker.
I'm 63 years old with 6 kids. I can't rely on luck anymore.
Look at Spiro.
He's talking about his career and that he can't rely on luck anymore. This goes exactly to his motivation not to tell the truth.
I mean, it is alarming because it does seem very abrupt. He doesn't seem happy. I mean, they're essentially talking about whether or not he had a motivation to tell the truth. So I can definitely understand in that moment. I'm also a coffee nut, so sitting in a room all day trying to stay awake. It seems at times Baldwin is definitely looking a little sleepy, that he needs his coffee run. So I'm not going to necessarily hold it against him, but I mean, you could put maybe 2 and 2 together. It could look a certain way, but apparently that it's not as quite as meets the eye. So that being said, I'm absolutely exhausted. It's almost midnight here. Thanks so much for watching this video with me. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit the notification bell so you never miss another video from me. Also hit the like button because it tells the YouTube algorithm that this is newsworthy stuff. These stories are important to share because at the end of the day, yes, there are so many different victims out there and so many different stories, and Helena Hutchins is one of them. And just because, this trial involves a Hollywood actor doesn't mean that we should just completely brush it under the rug just because it's Alec Baldwin and you might feel a certain way. This is important stuff. This is still a woman's life, a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister. And I think it's important to continue to share these stories. So that being said, thanks so much for watching. If you want to make a donation, you can do so at the link at the bottom of my screen. At the end of every day, I will take 20% of all donations and donate it directly into the Karen Reed Defense Fund. Or if you want to donate directly into the Karen Reed Defense Fund yourself, I will also link in the description below for you as well too. Okay, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.